The sound was quiet, rhythmic. But in the absolute silence of the desert, it felt deafening. Tap. A pause. Tap. I was lying on the floor of my car, pressing my face into the dusty passenger side mat. My breathing was shallow. I was afraid to draw a full breath. Outside, no more than 4 inches from my ear, separated from me by nothing but tempered glass and a thin layer of metal, he was standing there. I couldn't see him, but I felt him. I felt the weight of his presence. I could sense his shadow falling across the interior. Tap. Metal against glass. He wasn't trying to break the window. Not yet. He was letting me know he was there. That he knew I wasn't asleep. That he knew I was hiding. The door handle moved. Slowly. Up. Down. The lock held. Then I heard his voice. Calm. Almost friendly. Muted through the glass. I know you can hear me. There's no signal out here, son. Open up. We need to finish what we started. These are 3 true scary stories about Route 66. I have always considered myself a rational person. I work in logistics. My life is maps, routes, arrival times, fuel consumption calculations. I don't believe in ghosts, UFOs, or urban legends. But there are things that don't fit into Excel spreadsheets. Things that happen on long stretches of road, when your brain shifts into a different mode because of exhaustion and monotony. In 2018, I decided to take a vacation and drive the historic stretch of Route 66. Not the tourist sections with souvenir shops. The parts people call the dead zone. Arizona. Near the California border. Places where the asphalt is cracked by the sun and the nearest gas station might be 100 miles away. It was around 4 in the afternoon when I left Kingman. The plan was simple: reach Needles before sunset, check into a motel, get some sleep. I was driving an old but reliable Jeep Cherokee. I had water, paper maps, GPS often glitches out there, and music. The first 2 hours were perfect. The landscape was mesmerizing in its emptiness. Ochre cliffs. Endless horizon. The occasional tumbleweed. I felt free. The strangeness began quietly. I noticed an old sedan parked on the shoulder. Dark blue. A Ford from the 90s, I think. It was positioned nose toward the road, as if about to pull out, but frozen. No one visible inside. That wasn't unusual. Cars break down out there and get abandoned all the time. I drove past without slowing down. About 20 minutes later, the sun began to sink, painting the desert in uneasy shades of red. Ahead, on the right shoulder, I saw a car again. Dark blue Ford. Nose toward the road. My brain immediately found an explanation. Just a similar car. Popular model. Plenty of old junk like that out there. I passed it. Checked my rearview mirror. It became a dot on the horizon. I turned on the radio, trying to catch any station. Nothing but white noise. 15 minutes later, the road curved around a rocky outcrop. When the straightaway opened up again, I saw it. The same dark blue Ford. Same position. That was when I felt the first cold stab in my stomach. I glanced at the odometer. I had driven 40 miles since the first sighting. There were no side roads. No one had passed me. It was physically impossible for the same car to be ahead of me 3 times. I slowed down. As I passed it for the 3rd time, I looked closer. The windows were completely tinted. Strange for an old wreck like that. And the rear bumper was missing a piece of plastic on the left side. I memorized that detail. "You're just tired," I said out loud. My voice sounded small in the cabin. Different cars. Coincidence. I pressed the gas, pushing the Jeep to 80 miles an hour. I needed to reach a town. The romance of the open road dissolved into a sticky anxiety. 10 minutes of silence. The road empty. I began to calm down. Then I saw the sign. An orange diamond, road work ahead. Strange. There had been no construction marked on my maps. The sign looked old, sun-faded. A mile later, another sign, detour. An arrow pointing left, onto a dirt road that disappeared into the desert. The main highway was blocked by concrete barricades. I stopped. The blocks looked heavy. Old. But they were placed, carelessly. Not the way official crews do it. No reflective tape. No blinking lights. Just raw concrete across the road. I looked at the dirt road. It twisted into darkness between low hills. My GPS still showed Route 66. My phone said no service. I gripped the steering wheel and thought. Logic said, take the detour. You can't ram concrete. But instinct, that ancient animal instinct that makes something freeze before a predator in the brush, was screaming, do not turn. I shut off the engine and rolled down the window to listen. Silence. Wind moving through dry grass. And in that silence, I heard an engine. Far behind me. I checked the rearview mirror. On the horizon, where I had come from, headlights appeared. Approaching fast. Too fast. This could be good, I thought. A local who knows the road. Another traveler. The car slowed as it approached. Dark blue Ford. Missing plastic on the left side of the rear bumper. I saw it clearly as it turned around and positioned itself behind me, blocking the way back. The engine stayed running. Its headlights flooded my mirrors, blinding me. I understood. Trap. Concrete blocks in front. Car behind. They were waiting for me to turn onto the dirt road. Into the desert. Where no one would find me. Or my Jeep. The Ford's door opened. I didn't wait to see who stepped out. I threw the Jeep into gear, slammed the gas, and jerked the wheel right, off the shoulder. The engine roared. Gravel sprayed everywhere. I decided to go around the barricades off-road. It was risky. There could have been ditches. Rocks. Anything. The Jeep shook violently. My head hit the ceiling. I heard brush scraping the undercarriage. In the mirror, I saw someone from the Ford running back to their car. I bounced onto the pavement beyond the barricades. The road there was clear. No construction. No repairs. It had been staged. I floored it. The speedometer climbed past 90. 100. Behind me, the Ford maneuvered around the blocks too. Its headlights locked onto me. It felt endless. 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. He didn't fall back. Didn't close in. Just stayed there. Hanging on me like a hound chasing prey. My Jeep was more powerful. But the old sedan knew the road. On curves, it gained ground. Then I saw lights ahead. Real lights. Not stars. Not headlights. Yellow streetlights. Oatman. A small ghost town. Crowded with tourists by day. Dead at night. But there were buildings. There had to be people. As soon as the town's glow became clear, the Ford slowed. In my mirror, I saw it brake hard, swing across the double yellow line, and disappear into the darkness with its headlights off. I drove straight into Oatman and stopped in front of the only bar that still had lights on. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't unclench them from the steering wheel. Inside, a few locals turned their heads. I must have looked insane. "Did you see a blue Ford?" I asked the bartender. My voice broke. He was an older man with a face like baked potato skin. He stopped wiping his glass. The bar went quiet. "You come through the old stretch?" he asked. "From Kingman?" "Yes." They blocked the road. Concrete barricades. A man in the corner snorted. "There are no blocks out there, son. I drove it an hour ago." "They were there," I said. "And the blue Ford. It chased me." The bartender sighed and poured me a whiskey. "On the house. We call them the vultures," he said quietly. "They're not ghosts. Just a group of people. They live in the hills. Use old cars. Know every turnout, every dry wash. They put up fake signs to herd tourists into the desert. Why? They strip the cars for parts. Sell whatever's inside." He paused. "And the people just disappear. The desert's big. Plenty of old mines out there." I spent the night in my Jeep parked directly in front of the police station in the next town. I couldn't bring myself to check into a hotel. In the morning, in daylight, I examined my Jeep. On the rear bumper, dead center, was a clear tire tread mark. As if someone had pressed right up against me. Close. But not enough to hit. And there was something else. On the dusty rear window, written with a finger, was one word. Almost. Part 2. After that incident, I didn't leave the city for 6 months. But work is work. This time I was sent to Albuquerque. I had decided to fly, but the flight was cancelled, and the cargo had to be delivered urgently. I had no choice but to rent a car and drive. I promised myself, no night drives. Only during the day. Only on federal highways. But plans are one thing. Reality is another. Because of an accident on I-40, a traffic jam stretched for miles. I was stuck in it for 4 hours. By the time traffic started moving again, the sun had already set. I was squeezed dry like a lemon. My eyes kept closing. I needed to stop. The navigator showed the nearest motel 15 miles ahead. The Desert Rose. The name sounded generic, but the reviews were decent, though old. I exited the highway. The motel was a long, one-story building shaped like an L, surrounded by gravel. A neon sign reading, "No vacancy," flickered, but the letters, N and O, weren't lit, so it simply read vacancy. There was only one pickup truck in the parking lot. And my car. The receptionist was a young guy, too jittery for a place this remote. He wouldn't look me in the eyes while checking me in. "Room 9, he muttered, handing me a key with a heavy brass tag. "End of the corridor. Quietest one." "Is it busy?" I asked, nodding toward the empty lot. "People are sleeping," he replied evasively. Room 9 was typical. Cheap floral wallpaper, the smell of old carpet, and an air conditioner humming like a Boeing preparing for takeoff. I threw my bag onto the bed, checked the door lock, flimsy, with a chain, and went to take a shower. The water smelled like rust, but washing off the road dust felt like bliss. When I came out, I lay down on the bed and turned on the TV. It showed only static. I turned it off. And then I heard it. Voices. They were coming from the neighboring room, through the wall behind the headboard. At first it sounded like muffled murmuring. A man and a woman. They were speaking quietly, but their intonations were strange. Monotonous. I listened closer. The walls and places like that are made of cardboard. He lay down at 10:15. Turned off the light at 10:20. He's lying on his back now. Pause. Breathing is steady. He's alone. It felt like an electric shock ran through me. I looked at the clock. 10:22. I sat up in bed. My heart pounded in my throat. Were they talking about me? No. Nonsense. Paranoia after last time. Maybe they were watching a movie? Or talking about someone else? I quietly stood up and walked to the wall. Pressed my ear against it. He stood up, the male voice said. Now it sounded clearer. Walked to the wall. He's listening. I jerked back as if burned. They knew. They could see me. But how? There were no holes in the wall. The mirrors were on the opposite side. I scanned the room. The ventilation grate near the ceiling? The smoke detector? Don't be afraid, Michael, the female voice said. It was sweet, syrupy, and disgusting. We're just observing. We want to see how you sleep. My name is Michael. I hadn't told the receptionist my name, I'd only given him my driver's license and credit card. I started dressing quickly. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get my arms into my sleeves. Where are you going, Michael? The male voice asked. You're tired. You need to rest. I grabbed my bag and keys. I didn't care about my things, my money, anything. I just wanted to get out. I ran to the door and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't turn. I pulled harder. Locked. But I hadn't locked it with the key from inside, only the latch. I looked at the latch. It was open. The door was locked from the outside. Someone was holding the handle. Or had blocked it. It's rude to leave without saying goodbye, the voice behind the wall grew louder. Now I could hear not just voices, but movement. Floorboards creaking in the neighboring room. Then I heard a sound in my room. A rustle. It was coming from the closet. The sliding closet door was open a couple of inches. I froze. From the darkness inside the closet, an eye was staring at me. There was no back wall. The closet was a passageway into the neighboring room, or a maintenance corridor. And someone was standing there. Open the door. I shouted, slamming my fist against the front door. Help. Silence outside. And from the closet, a hand slowly began to emerge. Pale. Long, holding something metallic. Adrenaline flooded my head. I grabbed the heavy desk lamp, yanked the cord from the outlet, and hurled it into the closet with all my strength. The lamp struck something soft. A muffled cry and a curse followed. The person in the closet stumbled back into the dark passage. I didn't wait. I stepped back and rammed my shoulder into the front door. Once. Pain shot through my shoulder. Twice. The wood cracked. Get him, the voice from the closet shouted. Now it sounded angry, stripped of any fake softness. Third hit. The lock tore out with splintered wood. The door flew open. No one was standing there. A wooden wedge had been jammed under the door from the outside. I burst into the parking lot. The night air burned my lungs. The receptionist booth was empty. The lights were off. I jumped into my rented Toyota, locked the doors, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw the door of room 9 open. 3 men stepped out. The receptionist and 2 large men in work clothes. One of them held his hand to his face, blood seeped between his fingers. The other had a crowbar. They didn't run. They just stood there and watched as I turned around and drove back onto the highway. I drove until dawn, until I reached Santa Fe. At the police station, they took my statement reluctantly. "We'll check," they said. A week later, a detective called me. "We checked the Desert Rose motel, Mr. Michael. And? Did you find the passage in the closet?" "The Desert Rose burned down 3 years ago, sir. It's nothing but ruins. We went to the site. No one lives there. There's no electricity. Are you sure that's where you stayed?" I hung up. I knew I had been there. I had seen the charge on my credit card. On my bank statement it read: asterisk payment, $0. Recipient, thank you for stopping by, asterisk. Part 3. The third story happened very recently, and it still doesn't let me sleep. I was driving back from California to Texas. I decided to take a shortcut through one of the lesser-used stretches of Route 66, not far from the New Mexico border. It was night. The moon was bright, washing the desert in a ghostly blue light. My truck, an old Ford F-150, started acting up. The engine was overheating, even though the night air was cool. Eventually, steam poured out from under the hood, and I had to pull over to the shoulder. I opened the hood. The radiator hose had burst. There was no fixing it on the spot without parts. I took out my phone. No service. Classic. I got back into the cab, locked the doors, and decided to wait until morning. I didn't feel like sleeping. The silence around me was absolute. Ringing. Oppressive. An hour later, headlights appeared on the horizon. I flashed my high beams. The vehicle slowed down and stopped in front of me. It was a tow truck. Old. Rusted. But its emergency lights were working. A man stepped out. Around 50. Greasy coveralls. Thick beard. He looked like a typical small-town mechanic. He walked up to my window and knocked. I lowered it a couple of inches. "Trouble, son?" he asked. His voice was hoarse. Smoker's voice. "Radiator," I said. "Hose blew." "Unlucky. Nearest town's 40 miles. But I've got a shop not far from here. 5 miles, maybe. I can give you a ride. We'll fix it in the morning." It sounded like salvation. "Can you tow me?" I asked. "Winch is busted," he said, spreading his hands. "But I can drive you to the shop, and in the morning we'll come back with tools. Fix it here. Or haul it with a rigid bar." I hesitated. I didn't want to leave the truck. But sitting in the desert without water was stupid. "All right," I said. "Let me grab my stuff." I stepped out, slinging my backpack over my shoulder. As I closed my door, I noticed something strange. The tow truck's headlights were on, but the engine was running too quietly. Almost silent for an old diesel like that. And something else. On the passenger seat, where he was inviting me to sit, there was a child's toy. A teddy bear. Dirty. One ear torn off. A mechanic with a teddy bear? Maybe he had kids. But when he opened the door for me, I saw the floor of the cab. It was clean. Sterile clean. Not a speck of dust. Not a drop of oil. A layer of plastic sheeting covered the floor mat. An alarm bell went off in my head. "You know," I said, taking a step back, "I think I'll wait until morning here. I've got friends driving this route. They'll pick me up." The mechanic's smile didn't fade. But his eyes turned cold. "It's dangerous out here at night, boy. Coyotes. Snakes. Get in." It didn't sound like an offer. It was an order. "No thanks. I'll wait in my truck." I walked quickly back to my pickup, got inside, and locked the doors. The man stood by the open door of the tow truck, watching me. Then he slowly shut the door, walked over to my truck, and pulled on the handle. Locked. He leaned toward the window. "You're smart," he said. "Most get in right away." He walked back to his tow truck. I thought he was leaving. He wasn't. He reached into the back and pulled out something long. A crowbar. Then he turned off his headlights. Now we were in darkness. Only the moon. He approached my truck from the passenger side. I could see his silhouette. And then the thing I described at the beginning of this story began. Tap. He struck the window lightly with the crowbar. Not hard. Just testing the sound. Tap. I slid down onto the floor of the cab, trying to make myself invisible. "I'm not in a hurry," he said from the other side of the glass. "Sun comes up in 5 hours. This truck'll be an oven by 10. And I've got the water." He began walking around my truck. Slowly. Tapping every window. Tap. 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 It was psychological torture. He was looking for a weak point. Or maybe he was just enjoying my fear. An hour passed. Then another. He didn't try to break the glass. He just stayed there. Sometimes he sat on the hood of my truck. I could feel the suspension sink under his weight. Sometimes he hummed a melody without words. At some point, I must have dozed off from nervous exhaustion. Or blacked out. I woke to bright light. I jerked upright. A police cruiser was parked behind my pickup, its light bar flashing. An officer was knocking on my window. "Sir? You okay?" I opened the door and nearly fell out. "He's there," I shouted, pointing into the darkness. "The mechanic. The tow truck." The officer looked at me carefully. "There's no one here, sir. I've been patrolling this stretch for an hour. Your vehicle's alone." I stepped out and looked around. The desert was empty. No tow truck. No tire tracks in the gravel. The wind had swept everything smooth. But he was here. He was knocking on the windows. The officer shined his flashlight at my truck. "Sir, you probably overheated. The glass is intact." He ran the beam across the passenger window. And froze. The glass was covered in hundreds of fine scratches. As if someone had methodically, hour after hour, dragged the tip of metal across it, carving spirals. And on the dusty hood, where the mechanic had been sitting, there weren't impressions from someone's weight. There were objects laid out neatly in a row. My wallet. The one I thought I'd lost at a gas station 100 miles back. A photograph of me, taken while I slept inside the truck. View through the windshield. And that same dirty teddy bear with the torn ear. The officer went pale. "We need to go, sir. Right now." "Do you know who that was?" I asked when we got into the patrol car. He stayed silent for a long time. Only when we reached the lit highway did he finally speak. "We find those gifts on the hoods of abandoned cars about once a month. Usually we never find the owners. You're the first one who made it to morning. Now, when I drive down the highway and see lonely headlights in my rearview mirror, I don't stop. Even if I get a flat tire. Even if the engine catches fire. I'll drive on the rims until the wheels fall off. Because I know this. There are stretches of Route 66 that don't belong to us. They belong to those who hunt in the dark. And if you see a blue Ford, a motel that isn't on any map, or a kind mechanic in the desert, don't stop. Just don't stop."